Hey Bronx, how's it going, buddy? I'm honestly exhausted. I don't know why I did this, but I don't know. I kind of wanted to do something to try to relax. Let's just wait for some folks to come in. Hey, Sly. So hi. Yeah, I decided, just kind of out of the blue, wanted to show off some brushes that I use. Some regular brushes that I use, and hopefully they might be a little useful to you if you want to either purchase them somewhere or look into them. But I just wanted to do like a short introduction of just tools that I use. If you find this useful, then that's great. If you don't, you're not watching anyway. Enrique. So yeah, if you don't know already, and it says like right up here, I use Clip Studio EX. That's the high-end version of Clip Studio. And I usually use my Wacom Cintiq. I get that question a lot. That's why I put that up there. Yeah. So, just to start off, I mean, most of my brush sets are fairly simple. My favorites and my usual go-tos are from Friendin, and let me spell that out. Friendin is a website, or it's an artist who makes a lot of brush tools, and let me see if I can get their website up here for a second. I'll just put that on the chat right now. Friendin.com was one of the first places that I went to for Clip Studio. Hi, Motion Art Studio. Thank you so much for the follow. Friendin was the first place that I went to when I started Clip Studio, just because it was one of the only places at the time when Clip Studio was still Manga Studio. And he had some tools set up that made it easier for inking and doing comic illustration, stuff like that. And the one that I'm using right now, and give me a second. The one that I'm using right now is the one that I use the most, and I use this a lot for inking, and most of the time I use it for like just really, really rough stuff, like rough sketches and stuff like that. Doing drafting. It's like just doing a quick drawing here right now. So this one that I'm using right now is called Inker Bob's Big Belly. And I know that's a really... it's a very interesting title for a brush. But honestly, it's been the most stable for me. The one that comes default with Clip Studio, it's like, it's okay, but for some reason I don't think it has the same stability that Bob's Big Belly has, because I just like how I can make really, really light, thin strokes, and then I can also make very, like, fat, thick strokes here. So it's like, it's very, very, very easy to do the line width that way. This will probably be recorded. Yeah, I mean, this will most likely be saved up on YouTube since I'm doing Restream right now. But Twitch also saves videos. Speaking of, if there's anyone on YouTube right now that's watching me, you're probably going to be better off watching me on Twitch. I'm not going to use Restream often, but this video will be saved, so if anyone really wants to just kind of like look back on the brushes that I use, by all means, I hope this kind of helps out a little bit. Anyway, again, so let me this is the brush, and let me make it a little bit bigger. Like, that's generally what the brush stroke looks like. And let me go to one of the usual Clip Studio pens. This is G Pen. You'll notice that it's not. It's like it still has the same stability, but for some reason I feel like I can't make. It doesn't have the right pressure to it. I'm not sure what the difference is. It's like the stabilization is at 6. I don't know if that makes a difference. But you'll notice here, I try to avoid that often. And that happens a lot when I use the G Pen. I like it when the brush stroke just has like a nice thin end, and then I can make it thicker as I move on. You know what I mean? What do you do if your pressure isn't working? Okay, so I usually go into the Cintiq settings for that. And right now, let me check what my settings are right now. It varies from person to person. It depends, because the one thing that I've noticed for me specifically is that if I realize I'm too heavy-handed with the pressure, my hand begins to hurt. And I don't want that. I really just want to have like a nice sensitivity for that. So right now, my pressure is like just probably about 1 away from the middle, between soft and firm. So let me just show you right now. This is right now my pressure sensitivity for my Cintiq, and that seems to be okay. If it's too firm, I start to realize that I'm using too much pressure on the brush, and that will be too much pressure on the pen, on the tablet pen, and too much pressure on my hand, and that ends up making my hand hurt like immensely. So usually I try to keep myself from that. So let me do one thing with this, because this right now is the rough. Let me show you how it feels when I start using this as an inking brush. Oops, that's not the... So usually when I ink my stuff, I like to have it at a light blue, because it helps me differentiate from the dark pen line to the light underdrawing. So Let me move this out of the way. Hope you guys can see that. So, I'm a little close there. I want to keep this at 100%. But when I ink, and usually I tend to ink at like a higher resolution. I'm right now drawing fairly small. But when I ink, you notice that it has like a nice balance between thick and thin. So depending on the pressure that you use, you should get a nice handle of the brushwork, of like how thick you want your line work to be. And it also helps. Here's another thing that I do, is I have like 2 buttons on my tablet pen, and it's the buttons that are on the side. I usually set those to these keystrokes. And the keystrokes are the brackets, like the 2 brackets that are like this when you look at the keyboard. These usually are set to pen size, so that when you press it, it makes the brush size bigger and smaller. And that often really helps me also with the pressure and the size of the line weight that I want to use. And because it's so... I mean, you could set it to anything you want, but I've always set it to my brush pen. What resolution do I usually recommend? I usually work at 350. That's like 50 above what the usual is, but I just like that little bit more of a larger resolution, just because. I'm just wondering, T.S. Wessel, do you have a Cintiq? Are your drivers updated? Because if you can't see these kind of settings, then I suggest you update your drivers. So, you see that I have like thinner lines here that I'm working with? It's because I made the brush size a little bit smaller. And if I make it bigger, now I can work with thicker line weights, and that is good for like outlines and stuff like that. So, this is just a sample right now of what I do with Bob's Big Belly. This is what I usually use for when I'm inking comics. Most of my comic work and my illustration work has been used this way. This is also good for cell shading, and I don't know, it just feels nice. I've liked it so much better than the usual G Pen, and I know that Friendon comes with like a pack of inking brushes. This is the one that I've used the most, and it just feels nice. It feels natural. It feels like when I used an inking brush pen, I loved the way that I could work with line weight. But the thing is that I wasn't really comfortable with my own stability of my own hand. You know what I mean? Clip Studio actually helps with stability, and with the stabilization settings here, I'm going to show you the settings. This might help a little bit. If it shows. There we go. So you'll notice that I can make this a little bit bigger. So usually the anti-aliasing is just a little bit to the left here. This just means that, you know, when you have stabilization, oops, yes, apply a transform. I'll just do that. So this just means that the feathering around, it's not going to be, you're not going to be able to see it from here, but the feather, there's like a little bit of feathering on the edges of the line weight. And the less anti-aliasing that you have, the more crisp the line is. See, this is like, this is another thing that I've liked to use recently. The anti-aliasing on the left side here. This one, this setting.
Another one. Oh, this is gonna be fun.
This setting has probably been the best. I call this the pixel setting because when you go up close and you notice the line, there's absolutely no feathering. You check out the feathering. I've used the same pressure on each one of these. And this is the one all the way on the right, and this is the one all the way on the left. I don't know if this means there's more or less anti-aliasing. I just call this one pixel weight. Because it's nice that you can make like little pixel like line work. I mean, it's not that great, that small, because the pen pressure is still a big issue with it. Because the smaller that your pen is, the less likely you'll be able to actually make a line. At any rate. So, now that I'm showing off Bob's big belly, I want to show you the anti-aliasing one, because I just love the way that's been looking. It's, I would assume, here, let me, none. Okay, so this is anti-aliasing turned off. And, I can probably take this drawing, double it, and just copy it over, and I'll ink this one with no anti-aliasing. It's just it gives like a nice little bitmappy look to it, and I just always like this look, just because it gives it kind of a video gamey feel. If you play around with it for a little bit, it's like you can make some really, really interesting stylized drawings with this kind of pen. And you could do, I've done like sprite work with this pen. I've used this mostly in Photoshop, anti-aliasing, or non-anti-aliasing. And it's actually, I've come up with some nice looking sprite pieces. I don't do it a lot, but when I do, it's like, it's nice and it's fun. And it's just like, it will make your stuff kind of pop a little bit. Because when things look too smooth as well, you kind of do, I don't know, it's like, it's great when stuff looks smooth. Don't get me wrong on that. But when you have an anti-alias look, you can come up with some really fun stuff, and and especially when it comes to coloring, it's like you have this nice transition where there is no blending, and it just kind of gives off this really nice cell shade look. And also, if you make, say, a really, really teeny tiny drawing, Let's just do this real quick. If you do like a really teeny tiny drawing and you zoom that up, you can get like a nice pixelated look to it, which makes it look more blocky, but it's just a lot of fun to just work with. Alright, so next brush that I want to show off, I have to remember to turn that back on. So I have another brush that I call Ink Jagger. I think this is also a friend-in tool, but what's great about this tool is that it breaks up the line weight a lot, where it doesn't, the stabilization is kind of like all over the place, so it makes the line work look very jagged. And that's always fun to use for something with a little bit more texture to it. So if you want a drawing that just like looks a little bit, not so much off, but just kind of like it looks rough, using this tool kind of helps. And there's a specific, let me see if I can find it. There's a specific setting to this that kind of that you can kind of like put onto any brush that you want. I think it's called the gap setting.
Oh, this is gonna be fun.
Hi, Fang. Oh, thanks, Trainer Nova, for the follow. So it's called gap, and it's in the stroke setting of a brush. And the more gap that you put in a drawing, in a brush, the more broken the line work looks, and it's kind of neat. So this is like a medium gap line weight, and if I make the gap more, like let's say instead that was 40, now 100, the line is now even more broken up, you'll notice. So it's like, see, now there's more of a gap between lines. And even more so, it's like now it just looks like you're drawing ants. But I think 40 is like the perfect balance, because the lines are still touching, but there's still like this jagginess to it. Let me write down the brush name to this. So this is Ink Jagger, which I believe is another friend-in tool. So I'm gonna tell you, I got these brushes from all over the place, but mostly I've been using friend-in. And so yeah, now that we have that, once again, I need to color this so that so let me show you what this looks like when I clean it up. And you're going to notice that it looks very unstable, but it's like a nice texture. And this makes your even your inked work will look very, very rough. And you can just treat it that way. You can treat it like a pencil drawing. So it's like you don't really need to worry about how clean the drawing looks. It's just have fun. Like make it really rough, make it really make it a draft. And the thing about this brush is that it kind of forces you to feel that way. So if you want something more clean, use Bob's Big Belly, but if you want something to look like nice and rough and like a pencil drawing, by all means use the ink Jagger or use the gap setting. And it's great to just kind of like do some cross hatching if you'd like. Some like little hatching there. It just gives it a more grittier look. It makes it feel a little natural, like you're drawing on some sort of textured paper, or you're working on on a sketch piece, like in a sketchbook. And yeah. So how do you get these tools? Okay, so go to friendin.com, and he has these brushes for sale. And right now I'm showing off the inking brushes, so they're going to be in the ink set. And I think he lists them out on which ones are in each set, but it's not even that much. Let me see how much is Clip Studio brush set. So let's see. So right now he's selling 800 of his Clip Studio brushes for like just $15. I honestly think that's a bargain. And I think it said that there's a 30% off discount. Yeah. So if you check out 30% off at checkout. So yeah. But if you want as well, there's also, he has these sets also kind of broken up into different categories. So like there's the pencil set, there's the inking set, there's the painting set. It's all actually, let me see. Yes, go to store.friendin.com, and it looks like he only I guess they aren't broken up. I guess like he only has the 800 plus Clip Studio set, because I kind of gathered like if people want his brushes, they're just going to buy them all for, in one go. So, but for $15, you're getting like a lot of brushes, and you can just play around with those, and I think it'd be perfect. I think it's perfect for anyone who wants to try and play around with the different brushes. It's great. It's great. So let's move on, and I'm going to show off another one of my brushes that I like to use. And this is, let me see. This is the Painterly Photoshop Round. This isn't so much. I hope. Oh wait, sorry. This, I don't usually use this as like I don't use this brush that much for like inking or rough work, but this is the closest thing to a Photoshop brush that I've been using for decades in Clip Studio. And what this brush basically is like, it has a nice density to it, where the line weight, let's see if I can show it. It's like, it's light and then dark, the more pressure that you put into it. And it's also just slightly, the pressure is also slight enough where you can get like a nice edge to it. So when you do your lines, you can still see it tapering at the end. Another thing that I like about Clip Studio, and this is kind of a tangent right now, but what I really enjoy is that you can set your paintbrush to basically opacity. So I have a hotkey set up where that when I press it, it will change it to an eraser basically. But what's great about this is that it keeps the pen settings that you're using so that when you press the button, like if I made a mistake, I press this button and with the same brush, I'm just using the eraser. It uses the same settings as the brush that I use to draw with. And it just basically does not create another color. It's just erasing it. And I don't have to go back to press the eraser tool, then use it, and then go back and use the pen tool. It's just nice. It's just a nice little thing that Photoshop does not have that I wish they would implement. It just feels like why would you want the eraser tool to have different settings? I feel like you should be able to use the same brush to erase, you know? And that's something that I've always kind of liked about Clip Studio. And because it's so easy to swap the colors and see, let me show you. So right here, right where the color wheel is, these are the different colors that can be set. There's black and white, which is you can basically set this to any color you want. And when I press the button to basically erase something like that, this is highlighted instead of this. And this basically means transparency. So it treats your brush stroke like an eraser. So it's as simple as that. I've always loved that. I've always loved it's basically my go-to when I draw, and it helps me if I see a mistake and I want to just kind of mold a drawing into a better shape. See like that? I just kind of use that eraser setting, or transparency setting, I should say. But I'm using the same brush. The downside of that, and it's mainly something that I've seen, I do with, say, Ink Jagger, and let me show you that again. See, when you have a broken up brush like that, and you use transparency, it's also going to be broken up. So you're going to get a little bit of little pieces that will just still be there, even though you've brushed over it several times. But still, it's like working with the settings of the brush that you're using, and it still kind of helps it in a way. It still kind of makes a nice textured feel to it. So anyway, I'm gonna go back to the Photoshop round, and wait, what layer was I on? I've already forgotten what layer. So yeah, but if you notice that there's a lot of gradient around my brush strokes here, and so I'm gonna make the brush a little bit bigger, and I'm going to like lightly shade some spots. And you can change the pressure settings to this brush so that it makes it a little bit easier to work with. But and again, this is better if you're like working with color. There are other brushes that I have in the same kind of setting that are a little bit more subtle than this. This is more of like a I would consider this like an outline brush. And then I will go into, say, another layer, and I have these on another thing, but I have these dry brushes that I usually color with, and you'll notice that they kind of have the same sort of like airbrushy look to it, and I'm going to show you how nicely it blends and gives a nice like little blending effect. And this one's kind of like a harder blender. There's also a lighter blender so that you can blend a little bit more lightly. And so you can make like a hard edge to your shadows, and you can also kind of make it blend a little bit better. This brush set that I'm using right now to color, this is not the Photoshop brush that I'm using right now. This is called Norasan, and I think you might have to look these up. I think that I downloaded these through the Clip Studio shop. I could be wrong, but let me see. Norasan brush set. I'm not really getting the results. Uh-oh. Well, darn it. Oops. Well, maybe if I look up Clip Studio. Let's see. No, that's Friendin again. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I did get these from Friendin. Oh boy. I'm really sorry, guys. I wish I knew where I found these brushes. They probably would help you out if you knew. But they are basically airbrush tools. And I have these all set up like in an airbrush like tool set where I could like see right now I'm using like the Soft 3, and this gives off like a nice like little gradient blend.
This is gonna be fun.
And I like to use these if you want to give it like a nice soft edge, and then if you want to go back and do the hard edge, you go back to the dry brush W. So I'm honestly, I'm just hoping that this helps folks out a little bit to kind of like get an idea of the different kinds of brushes that I use, and get like some nice little gradients and blends. And again, these are brushes that I had to find because the ones that come in Clip Studio, you might have to futz around with the settings a little bit with them because they don't necessarily do what I want them to do. Usually when I work with a lot of the tools that come with Clip Studio, they have like this tendency to blend. They don't blend that well. And it's hard to explain because sometimes when I just want to color one piece of something and I have it selected, it will often just kind of like bring in the color that's next to what is selected. So it just kind of like brings that in. You know what I mean? It's like if I was using a pink brush to just kind of like fill in here, and right next to it, which is deselected, is the light blue. The light blue, when I use the brush, it'll kind of like, in a very subtle way, it'll like come into it like that. Like I don't know if you guys can see that, but it's like it will bring in basically the edge of this light blue into the pink, and I don't want that because I wanted to color it pink, you know? These brushes don't do that because they don't have like a blending setting of some sort where it's like it carries another color even though you have a certain color selected. So yeah, it's kind of weird. Anyway, these airbrush tools are very nice to just kind of like give like a nice blend to your drawings. And again, I don't use the Photoshop brush to like finish anything. I mostly have used it when I was drawing in Photoshop. And I liked it so much that I was really hoping that they brought it to... They would bring it into Clip Studio somehow, and this is like the closest that I could find. And again, I apologize that I can't seem to find where you can find these particular brush sets. I have them labeled as Nora-san. N-O, like, here, let's see. Nora-san. And the brush, it's like a whole set of brushes. And these are airbrush tools. So I use these basically to color my pieces. And the brushes that are in are Gesture, Line 2, Brush Dry S, Brush Dry W, Soft 3, Air, Brush 3, Flat 2, and there's like a couple other ones that I don't use, but I just keep around. There, look, there's a chain brush. There's a chain brush that I mean, it's cool, but I don't need it. Look, here's another one. I don't. That's neat, but it looks really jank. I don't need this. This doesn't seem like I will use this for anything. But it's there. Here's another one. This one I might use a little bit more because it just seems a little bit more. I don't know. At any rate, I'm digressing. And then there's also like a little brush shader here, which is I don't use, but it's cool. It's cool if you want to do textured stuff. By all means, honestly, these are the ones that I use the most. Let me make like a quick screen grab of that, where I could show you what these look like. So it's just like, yeah. Let me. So these are just like, it's basically harder to softer. So these ones specifically have a softer edge. Like these ones have a harder edge. I would consider these to have more of... Sorry. These have a medium edge. And these tools here, these are basically like Airbrush. So these are the soft edge. So these are like... So these ones basically are Airbrush. These ones are kind of like more of a painterly. And these ones are just kind of like a harder edge. What am I doing? I clicked on it and then I drew. Yeah, see, this is a gesture drawing. This one has like a very interesting blend. But it's like a neat, like almost like watercolory. So maybe I shouldn't consider this a harder edge. This one's the harder edge. This one is watercolor. And you'll notice that it kind of like washes like whatever color that you have, and it kind of blends it a little bit. You're still going to get some like residue. Like it's very, very light, but there's still color here. But if you keep erasing it, it'll go away. But honestly, this is good for maybe very painterly looking rough sketches. And the more that you use it, the darker it'll get. So it'll start off very light. See, but the more line weight that you put onto it, the darker it gets. And this watercolor tool is basically what I've been talking about earlier, where it just kind of like blends whatever color is next to it. So if I used red, it's going to blend red into it. You see how it kind of like makes it just work with the dark color. It's a neat brush tool to just kind of like want to experiment with color blending. Like I'm using green now, and if you use it over and over and over again, then the green will come in, but it's basically using the colors around it to kind of blend. It's a good brush. And again, it would be nice to remember where I got it. But if you want to look at the settings for this brush, see, that's a great thing about Clip Studio, is that you're not really, whatever brush that you get, you could play around with it as much as possible and get many different results. It just depends on what you like about it. And if you want to keep using it, you know, it's what you're used to. You have to basically get used to the brush that you find or feel that it works out for you. And that's why it's good that if you get a little overwhelmed getting like a ton of brushes in one set, it's like, don't worry about it. Take your time. Play around with the first brush that you see. Make a little rough drawing with it. And if you don't like using that brush, move on to the next one. And then try just playing around with that brush. Okay, so I'm going to move on from that one. And another one that I really like to use, and I'm trying to find it now. Oh my god. Where is it? I think it's this one. Is it this one? Yeah, I believe it's this one. This one's the Sumi Dry Brush. And I like to use this instead of any kind of pencil brush just because I like how it breaks up and makes it look like a rough pencil drawing. I will use this for anything that I want to draw that looks like a pencil drawing. And it has like that nice blend of texture and the pressure that you use on it makes it nice and dark, and the lighter that you use it gives it a nice kind of give it like a nice gradient to where it looks like you're using a pencil to kind of like graphite, like that's the term I was trying to look for, like kind of like a graphite feel to it. And you can still make drawings very dark. And you can lighten it up a little bit as well. So it's like you still have that nice drafting look to the brush. And I've used this several times for sketchy work, for rough underdrawings.
Another one? Oh, this is gonna be fun!
Thank you, Komoroshi, for the follow. This just kind of like really makes things look... Doc J Entertainment, thank you for the follow. If I'm not saying hello to everyone who gives me a follow, I apologize, but I really do appreciate everyone coming in to watch me do this little brief tutorial about brush stuff. I hope it's kind of helping out folks a little bit. I just wanted to kind of like show off how these drawings, how my drawings like tend to work with different brush settings. And also coloring. but right now I'm just kind of like going through drawing stuff. Like if I want rough drawings, then I use like a rough brush, and if I want to clean up stuff, I use like a more clean brush. And it makes things nice and crisp. Yes. Nice and crispy. You want like a nice crispy looking drawing when you finish something off. But if you want something to look nice and soft, and you just want to chill and make like a rough drawing, then you use something like the Sumi dry brush, because it's called dry for a reason, because it has like this dry edge look to it, where it's like it's very broken up, but it's a very graphy looking brush. I really honestly prefer this when it comes to pencil drawings, because this to me looks like a drawing that I would use for like say like a coal erase pencil. In like if I was drawing on paper and I was using like a black coal erase pencil, this is how they would look. There are other pencil brushes that Friendin has, and they're also great. Like here's the 2B pencil, and this is great. But I don't think the thing that I honestly like about the Sumi dry brush is that it makes it look darker. See, if I'm using see, this is the 2B pencil. You'll notice that it's very light in comparison. That's because it probably has something to do with the settings of the pressure or the darkness, but it's nice. It's nice and rough. Gives you a nice drafty look to it. But the Sumi brush it makes things pop a little bit more. And it helps because if I want something to look really dark, and I'm using, if I'm using the 2B pencil, here, 2B real pencil. Let me just label that correctly. So if I'm using the 2B real pencil and I want something to be really dark, I am applying far too much pressure onto my hand, and it starts to hurt my hand. The whole point of trying to work with pressure settings is to make sure you don't hurt your hand. If you're drawing and you suddenly realize that your hand is hurting, please go into your Cintiq pressure settings and soften that up. Or not soften, I mean turn it up, because you don't want to have like a light brush and then trying your hardest to make it really dark and like really pressing on the screen. You don't want to do that. You want to basically make the settings so that you have like a nice brush stroke. So let me see. I could probably change the settings to this real quick. I think there's a let's see, it's not anti-aliasing, it's not brush shape, it's not the thickness, stroke, no, border watercolor correction, stabilization. I could be wrong. Well, let me go into my Cintiq settings for a minute. and see if this could change anything. Oh, I already am in it. So if I make my tip feel just a little bit softer, then when I draw, there, see how it gets darker? Like the brush strokes are darker, but I don't really have a lot of pressure to the pen. But if I bring that back up and make it a little firmer, you'll notice that it's lighter. And I don't know if there's a way to do that in the settings of each brush, but there has to be. I just haven't figured it out. But I have the setting of this brush to the way I like it. But in terms of the settings with the Wacom tablet, I have it just at the right amount where I am not applying too much pressure to my hand. And I was right before, it's softness. You want the pressure sensitivity to be softer if you are applying too much pressure to your hand. Because the firmer that it is, the more you're going to want to apply that really hard, dark line work. And you don't want to do that because it hurts your hand. I've had to tell people so many times, soften up that pressure, because you're going to hurt yourself and you're going to start getting arthritis on your hand. You want to get it to a nice point where when you make that drawing, when you make that brush stroke, that it's just the right amount of darkness and hardness. Endless Eclipse. I freaking love the emotes that you've been popping through. I wish I could give some good advice for people who already have like problems with their hands. I would say soak them. Treat your hands. Give your hands a nice treat. Get some Epsom salt and just have them in like a nice like soak in the sink, and it might help relieve some pain pressure. I mean, that's what I usually do. I don't know if that advice works for everyone, but it's something that I do. I started, when I had like foot problems, I would put my feet in like a bucket of Epsom salt water. And then I thought, like, I wonder if this works for your hands as well. And then I started doing that every once in a while, and it seemed to help. I don't know if it's psychosomatic, but it really kind of helped me a little bit. But honestly, the biggest thing that helped me out was just kind of softening up that pen pressure on the Cintiq. I had to do that at work. I had to do that here. It's, yeah. It's like, find something that would be nice and helpful for your hand. Okay, so, and, here, this is just an airbrush. I don't like to use that too much. This is, again, the non-anti-aliasing brush. I've already kind of talked to you about that. Glazer blender. I don't know. This might be the same. This might be the same as what was it called? The gesture brush. It's called Glazer Blender, and I think that's also a friend-in brush. But this gives off like the same kind of watercolory feel to your drawing, where it's like you can give it a nice blend. Here, I'm gonna Glazer Blender 2. I don't know what the first one is. I have these all put in a sub-tool set where these are basically my favorite tools that I've always kind of used. I don't use this one a whole lot because I don't tend to draw like this, and I always draw an eye. I always, whenever I use like a tool like this, I always like draw like an eye. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just like, it's my way of figuring out if this makes a drawing look nice. But you get like a nice looking eye, then you got yourself a nice brush. Okay, so I mean, those are my usual brush sets. Those are the tools that I use the most. I've always loved these brushes. I've like, ever since I found them, I use them the most. I have so many goddamn tools. I usually don't know what to do with them, and that's I mean, it's a nice problem to have, but at the same time, it's like, if you want to kind of experiment and use another brush, by all means, go ahead. I have not really experimented with a lot of brushes since I got these, and I kind of wanted to tutorialize the brushes that I use for the most part, and I also kind of wanted to use this as an excuse to kind of browse through different brushes that I do have and see how they work with my method of drawing. And if you guys like them, it's great. This is more of a more selfish thing of mine, where it's like I am basically using the privilege that I've had of owning all of these brushes, and just kind of presenting them to you to see, you know, if they're nice or not. So why don't we do that after I save this this drawing here? I might post these later, but we'll see. We'll see. Gonna make a new page, and let's get to experimenting, huh? So, in my Frienden ink set, I have a bunch of different brushes. I feel like I've used... Okay, this is Inker Nib Gritty. Oh, whoops. Sorry. This has like a similar feel to the broken up brush that I have. Wait, what was it called again? The Ink Jagger. Yeah, this has a similar feel to the Ink Jagger, but it's like it has like a weird bite to it. It just feels... It feels like it's a little bit more broken up. The lighter that my brush strokes are, the more broken up it is, and the darker it gets, the more thick it gets. Ooh, I kind of like this. I kind of like this brush. I might actually use this brush. It's not too similar. It's not too similar to the other one that I use a lot. I kind of like how it gives off a sort of like, gosh, what's it called? It's What is that called when you have like a press, like it's an inking press? There's a word for it. I used to do this all the time in high school, where it was like you used a chisel to kind of like break through a kind of board, and you would use whatever pattern you chiseled out and put it on an ink press, and then you basically made a drawing out of whatever it is you chiseled out, but you have it now as a press where you could like just constantly, you know, press the ink onto paper, and it'll be like, it's like copying stuff. What is that called? Oh, that's gonna bother me for a while, but if anyone can think about that, let me know. I don't even know how to explain it, but I do like this brush. It's really, really nice. Woodblock. You know what? Let me see. Woodblock chisel ink. Woodcut? No. It was a weird, like, it was almost rubbery. It was like a rubbery sort of surface. To make ink copies was block printing, rubber stamp. No, so weird. It had like a specific name. Had a very, very specific name to it, and it was like it was easy to chisel out pieces. It wasn't wood. It was soft enough to be chiseled easily, but it was hard enough where it was like you wouldn't be able to ruin it very easily. And damn, oh man. This is gonna bother me. It's really gonna bother me. I swear, this was like, when I went to art school, it was almost like hammered into my mind that this is a regular thing that people do, and it's always gonna be used. To me, it just felt like this is something I won't see on a daily basis, but I know that fairly, like, indie artists use a lot. Block printing. Maybe it's just called block printing. It's probably just called block printing for all I know. Anyway, I was just gonna say that this kind of makes it look like that. This is neat. I like Inker Nib Gritty. The less pressure that you put on it, the more broken up it looks, and it gives off a not so much like a pencil look, but it gives like it gives off a feel like if your pen was running out of ink, but you're still using it and it breaks up a lot. It's like that kind of feel. And I don't know. I don't know about you, but I've always kind of liked that. I've always liked using a pen to the end point where it just kind of feels like it's running out of ink, but you're still using it. And it gives off a good texture. And as I said, bite. Gives off a nice bite. And that's Inker Nib Gritty. What else do I have? I have something called Sumi Digital Round. And let's... oh god. Sumi Digital Round. This is I mean, this is kind of the same way. It has like a different... This almost feels like you're drawing on a... This feels like you're drawing on a very textured piece of paper. And your brush is kind of like kind of fighting with it almost. But I don't know, it's kind of neat. I don't know if I'd use this a whole lot because it kind of makes it look like it's going through a filter. But it is kind of neat how it just kind of gives off a nice soft look to it, but it still feels gritty enough that it's a good sketching tool. Like this, I would say, is a good like rough drawing tool to use. You want to use this tool when you're just doing something like really, really quick and rough and drafty. I would honestly say if you want to do background work, this would probably be the best to use that with. So it's like if you're doing something like, say, like a background, and you want to create like a rough setup of where your characters are going to be. I always draw a couch. I always fucking draw a couch, but this is going to be really simple. It's not going to be. It's not going to. Am I making the Simpsons house? Am I drawing this? I mean, technically I am. Here, look, I'll just bring the TV then. There. And then we have the window on the left where Flanders comes in. And I guess there's a lamp. I don't remember if there's like, I don't know if there's any lighting in the Simpsons household, honestly. But this is a good drafting tool for background design. To me, that's what this really feels like. If you want to get like a nice rough drafting look, then yeah, here you go. Sumi Digital Round. That's a good one. Take on me, take on me, take me on. I'll be gone in a day or two. Sorry. I think that was also what this kind of reminds me of, this brush. So, if you haven't left from that, singing, let's move on to the next brush. What else do I have? So I have a few Sumi dry brushes. This was round, and here's flat. This one's like a little bit thicker. This one's just Sumi dry brush, and oh, this one's even more like thick. This, I mean, either way, these kind of like work nicely. Marge, bring me a beer. Homie, I already gave you a beer. Yeah, but I want another one. That's my Homer impression, everyone. Hope you enjoyed it. That's the Sumi brushes. So Sumi. Here's Inker Tech Pen, and this one seems, yeah, this is... this one's pretty cut and dry. I mean, it doesn't have... This one seems more like the same weight to any kind of brush that you... the Big Belly that I use, I like it because it goes from like thin to thick. This one's just like, it's just one line weight. I don't know if I really want to bother with that one. I don't really like brushes that do that. This is the natural. I think I used this one, and I didn't really like it that much in comparison to Bob's Big Belly because something I want you to notice, and let me see if I can give you kind of like an idea of the differences between the brushes. And please. So, if you notice, Bob's Big Belly just kind of gets like really thick in the middle, and that's probably why it's called Bob's Big Belly. It's because that there is a drastic change in pen pressure at a certain point, and that kind of helps it a little bit, especially if you have like a softer pen pressure, where it's like, where it seems like the natural just kind of like stays consistent, and it for some reason it feels very cold to me. So if you have like the natural here, let's bring that one up. So this is the Inker Natural. You'll notice that it's consistent. So it's a consistent line weight. I don't think I can't get used to that unless it's the drastic change in the middle there. So, but the natural, if you're used to that, go ahead and use it. I personally, I can't really get used to it. It's the same with Airbrush version 2. It's like there's something just it feels wrong to me, and I don't get that from the Bob's Big Belly. It's like it feels stronger. It feels stronger to me. And because the other ones feel like they drag to me. And that's probably the way, it's just probably the way I draw. Again, it's like, if you play around with brushes that you have, you'll notice there's sometimes ones that you have like a good feeling with, and there's others that you don't. So you want to get that brush that you can get used to, like, naturally. Let's see what this is. This is dry. This is Inker Dry Brush Pen. Oh, ooh. Inker Dry Brush. I mean, this is another. This is like another rough inking tool. Like this is what I would consider more of a pencil tool. See, to me, this doesn't... I mean, I think the only reason why this is considered an ink brush is because it's darker. But all in all, it's not giving me any... I mean, I'd probably use this over the Sumi Digital Round, just because Sumi seems to be on its own texture. This one seems like this is the texture of the brush. Sumi seems like you're basically using that because the texture of the paper is making this look this way. If that makes any sense. Or maybe vice versa. I don't know. What the hell am I talking about? Why are you guys here? Why are you guys listening to me? Ink or dry brush is nice. I mean, it's fine. I probably would use like a different kind of dry brush outside of this. I do appreciate you guys coming here to watch me, by the way, and I hope that this is semi-entertaining, i.e. educational, or aka educational. You're not learning a goddamn thing from me, I know that. But yeah, it's nice. This is another rough inking tool. There's a couple of these. So let's try Feather Faucet. This is Feather Faucet. And something that I'm noticing as I'm drawing is like there is a very, very noticeable, very thin line. It's a very thin line that happens the faster that you use this pen. See, I'm using this very fast, and you notice how my line work kind of like it kind of like comes with a little bit of a curly line at the end. I'm not doing that on purpose. The way I draw, when I draw really fast, this happens. So it's like if I'm doing like a really, really rough drawing, see, this will not happen if I'm using Bob's Big Belly. I am drawing the same way that I did with Feather Faucet. Do you see how brushes are so weird and wacky depending on like how you use them? It's like these will not happen with another brush. But because of the way that I draw, and I really like, and the speed that I try to draw my drawings, there will be a noticeable difference. Feather Faucet is, it creates these little curls. And it's not because I'm not trying to do it. It's just that when I draw when I rough my stuff at the speed that I draw them, I am not realizing how much the pen pressure at the end of the brush is keeping it from continuously dragging onto the canvas. So that yeah, see, there's like considerable drag, and it's making lines that I don't necessarily want. And again, I need to reiterate, I'm not doing this on purpose. You see me doing the same strokes for this drawing. It certainly makes it look different, but if I were inking, I would not be using this brush because it does this. I would rather use the Bob's Big Boy. I'm gonna call it Bob's Big Boy from now on. I also want to show you that I made another Bob's Big Belly brush. Like, I copied the brush that I have, and I went into the settings that basically help the the gap. So the gap is set like even like to 10, so that now it has like a more jittery look to it. And it's very slight, but it does give my drawings a little bit more texture. And if I'm inking something or cleaning something up, I should say. It gives it a little bit more of a flavor to the line work. And also the anti-aliasing for this is like too high. It should be a little bit low so we don't have that feathering at the edge. There we go. That's a little bit better. But you see how the jitter and the gap kind of makes it a nicer... gives it kind of like a nicer edge to the line. It's not perfect, but... See, like, maybe I should like, let's see. Let me use this on a drawing that I already made. And just kind of like... Should also make this a little lower. I don't want them to be too... I don't want my under drawing to be too... dark. Because then it will blend in with my cleanup lines. And it'll be harder for me to recognize what is my cleanup line and what is the rough below. Even if it's blue, even if it's a different color, it could still kind of deceive you in a way. Whereas the lighter the underdrawing is, the more I will be able to see the inked drawing above it. And if you notice, now that I'm using this... now that I'm using this kind of brush, which is a little bit more jittery, it gives it a nice edge to it, where it's not perfect, but it's still a clean drawing, but it gives it a little bit more flavor. And it still looks a little rough. Still looks a little rough. Still looks a little like a little bit more like the underdrawing, and the shapes kind of help make it look a little more drafty. But it's still a clean. It's still like a clean drawing. So, yep. Anyway. Maybe I should put that here, and I will call this gap settings for Bob's Big Belly. I want to rename these brushes so badly, but that's what you do to recognize certain brushes. Let's continue on. I kind of want to play around with a few more brushes. And see, closer to here I have like Lando Calrissian. This, okay, so if you notice like the cursor, how it's slanted, this will probably most likely have a very different feel to it, where it's like let me do like a really rough one. This one works a little bit like a medium version of both Bob's Big Belly and the feather faucet that I just used. But this isn't necessarily a rough brush. This is more like a cleanup brush. And I'm starting to draw like the same face over and over again. I apologize. I am not original at all. Here, I'll do this. I'll give her some buck teeth. This brush kind of makes me want to like lean to the right for some reason. And I'm wondering if it's just my own mentality or it's the shape of the brush. Yes, these are the friend brushes. These are the ink tools. And that's this one. Lando Cal Brushian. This one's like has like a little bit more weight to it. I might need to play around with the balance, but here's another thing I've noticed. So when I'm like drawing like a circle, it's I'm not necessarily a fan of the brush shape. The slight ovalishness of it kind of makes me a little bit unsure, because it maybe it's the fact that I'm too used to Bob's Big Belly, but I don't know. It's still nice. I want to give this one a chance, because this one gives nice, like, thick lines. It's like you could really make some nice, like, thick line work with this one. And let me try the Manga Studio 4 brush. I'm not sure about this one. This one seems more like Bob's Big Belly, and this one, yeah, it's a nice inking brush. Let me look. No, it's just round. I thought this was also oval, but here, like, this is Manga Studio 4. I think this was made because this is like the old brush studio. Like I feel like I used this brush when I first started using Manga Studio, which is what Clip Studio used to be. And yeah, I feel like I used this a lot more than I did the other brush back in the day. Because this feels like it still has like a nice dark thickness to it, and the lighter that you use it, the line weight is still sort of consistent. The thing about a brush like this is that if you like to have a consistent brush line, and you don't necessarily like to use thick and thins, then you might want to use this kind of brush, maybe. But I don't know. That's just me. I like to use nice thick lines, and I like to have thick and thins, and it kind of like helps me figure out, you know, I can mold it if I need to. Still want to play around with this drawing. But this one's nice if you want to have like nice thin lines. But again, this isn't really any different from Bob's Big Belly or Lando Calrissian. It's just another inking tool. I kind of want to skip these Manga Studio ones. This one's organic. I don't know what that means. Oh, okay. So you see the shape on this one? How it kind of has like this broken up like splat. That will, I mean, it's more natural, but you're gonna get like, you're not going to see consistency in your brush strokes with this. Like, if you want nice, clean, crisp looking strokes in your drawing, then you just want to use like something like Manga Studio 4 or Bob's Big Belly, because it's not a textured like brush shape. I call this a textured brush shape. Oh my god. Textured brush shape. And maybe there's like maybe there's a cheaper way to say that, but when you draw, you're going to notice that it's going to do stuff that you don't necessarily want it to do, and you don't really fill in gaps that you want. And again, with the eyes, I mean, the eyes are my go-to when it comes to stuff like this. Here, I'm going to draw a hand. And I think I like to draw eyes just because it's the balance of... it's the balance of the iris and the different shapes of like eyelashes and different line weight of certain things. But yeah, it's like I'm noticing something. It's like it's not. This brush is not really doing a lot of what I'm telling it to do. See, it's like even though I'm controlling the brush, it almost feels like it's still trying to escape my control, and it's not exactly where it is I want on the canvas. It's almost like it's not exactly there, and it has to do with the shape of the brush. And maybe it's because of what I'm used to. Maybe other people will enjoy this kind of brush. This certainly makes things interesting. I honestly, it's like if I wanted to, I find myself I would want to draw an entire comic with this brush, just because I want to see how it would look at the end. But at the same time, in terms of an inking brush, and I want to make like nice clean lines, if I was cleaning this up over a rough drawing, I would have a difficult time trying to figure out why it's not being drawn on the exact spot that I want it to. So that's Manga Studio 4 Organic Brush, which I think is trying to make it feel like, you know, like a bristle brush that you use to ink. I'm getting down to the last ones that I want to try out, and here is... Oh my god! It was right here all along. Scratchboard. That was what I was trying to convey to you guys earlier. It's called a scratchboard. It's... Oh my god. Suddenly the memory just came flying back. So what we would do is we'd use a scratchboard and take a chisel and just kind of like scrape out the shapes that we wanted. And once we were done with that, we'd take the scratchboard onto ink and then press that onto any kind of canvas that we wanted to make an inked piece. Scratchboard. I can't believe it took that long to figure it out, and it's right here. This tool is called Inker, Painter's Scratchboard Tool Emulator. Painter Scratchboard. Ugh. Oh, I don't like this. I don't like this one. Painter Scratchboard. I don't like this brush. I'm honestly already telling you. I can already tell that this brush is... It's going to be fighting with me because it feels... It honestly feels like it's not letting me draw. This has the problem that I've had with the past couple brushes. Like, it's like a little bit of both. It's first off doing that, like, that little curve when I draw too fast. It's like it's still doing that little curve at the end. It's not that noticeable, but it's there. It's not quite... See, like, alright, I'm going to do something for a minute. I'm going to make a shape, and now I'm going to fill this in. I am putting it over. See, like when I fill something up, and I feel like my pen is going over to the spot at the edge here. It's like this edge right here. It's not filling it, even though I am like basically putting my pen. It just stops. It almost feels like it's taking the stroke and just stops it right there. And that's a problem with a brush. And maybe it has to do with the speed in which I'm drawing in, but nah, Painter Scratchboard, no thank you. I do not like Painter Scratchboard. The other one, this one's called Inker Nib Tricky Dick. Fuck you, Brendan. God, what things... The names that you call these. And this is going to be my last brush for now. This is called Nib Tricky Dick. And it already feels very tricky. It's very thin. It is severely thin. I mean, I am like putting the brush... See, I am applying the pressure as hard as I can, and it's not even there. It's not even filling the cursor, if you've noticed. So this is a very thin brush. This might be good. This might be a good brush if you don't want to have thick line work. But no, I'm not necessarily liking this one, just because the thin... I'm not really that good with thin lines. I know that a lot of people are, and my god, when I see people from Japan drawing, I'm floored at how they could keep a line so consistently thin and still make a drawing look good. I don't know how anyone can do that. I know so many people who can draw with thin lines, and I'm like, how do you do this? How do you draw with a thin line to the point where it's like it could still make a drawing look good? I can't draw a thin line without it looking like complete garbo. Look at this. I made this thin line, and you will notice, like, maybe it's the stabilization. Maybe I need to still keep it stabilized and, like, really make the stabilization very high. But I have to basically make sure that I keep my drawings, like, very, very, very slow. I don't know, man. I don't know how people can do it. It is always, like, floored me how people can do that. Yeah, stabilization may be just the reason. But at the same time, it's like, I'm okay with it. I like drawing with thick lines. I always have. Maybe it's the cartoony nature in me or something, but if I'm drawing something, if I'm drawing anything, I like it to have some weight. And I know there's a lot of people out there who think, like, and I've heard this several times, specifically from artists in Japan, if you draw with thick lines, it's a sign of amateur. What did they say? It's an amateur way of drawing, because if you draw thick lines, it says that there's no confidence in your drawing. And I can understand that's a thing that is taught, especially when it comes to, like, anime or manga or something like that. And they could be right. I mean, honestly, I'm not confident enough to draw with very thin lines. However, I will also say that you have a ton of confidence if you can draw with a thick line and not give a fuck. because honestly, it's like, I really do like drawings that have weight to it in the way where it's like, if you draw rough and drafting, it's like, that's also a sign of confidence, because you don't care where the hell your drawing is going. You just want it to look good. You want to make your rough drawing at least show character and some nice design before it goes into the cleanup phase. And that takes a lot of confidence, honestly. I know a lot of people who have trouble doing rough drawings. Excuse me? I know people who have like a lot of problems doing rough drawings because they're worried about how the drawing's gonna look before they even do the cleanup process. You know? It's like, stop. God, fuck this song. If you want to show confidence in your drawing, just be as rough as possible. Like, don't even care. Don't even use the eraser. Just put lines on the paper. Make shapes as janky as possible. The whole point of a rough drawing is to make the drawing look the way you want before you clean it up. Because if you go right to the cleanup phase, it's going to look like stiff and very uncharacteristic, and you want to give your drawing life. And I honestly think drafting is the way to do that. You want to really give it some motion. So keep rough drafting stuff. If you want to clean it up later, you have every right to. That's the whole point of it. The whole point of the rough stage is that it's the rough stage. And if it looks good as a rough, keep it that way. You don't have to clean it up. You do not have to clean up anything. But if you like to clean up your work, then it would benefit your drawing if you gave your rough drawings a lot of character and life to it. And a lot of movement and a lot of just give it life. And then you'll have a good idea of the movement and the freshness of the rough, and clean it up, and your drawing will look a lot more lively. So, anyway, that is all the advice that I have for today. I am kind of a wreck right now, because before I even came in, I was severely exhausted and tired, and it's a hot day. But I am very, 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 very thankful that you all came in to watch me draw and test out brushes and show you my process. And honestly, that's really honestly refreshing to me. If I could come up with more tutorials and stuff, if I could think of stuff that I could show you just how I work and how I think about certain things, I would be more than happy to do that. So maybe if people are more in tune with that kind of stuff than my video game streams, then I will continue doing this. Believe me. It makes me very happy to know that people like the way I draw. So the video will still be up if you want to look back on it. I'm gonna save it, and my voice is gonna crack a little bit because I'm going through puberty right now. I've been talking a lot today. So, but I'm gonna try to see if I can come up with some other tutorial streams in the future, and if you folks really enjoy it, I thank you for that. But if you don't, whatever, you're not watching it anyway. So anyway, thank you so much for coming by. I really appreciate all of you watching and following. I'm going to continue doing this stuff. I may keep it on Restream. Who knows? It really depends, because YouTube likes to... It doesn't matter what I play. If I start playing any sort of music in the background, YouTube is going to freaking claim it. So I need to figure out a way to start doing videos like this that I could save and use for future benefit of artists who are interested in this sort of stuff. If there's music that I can use that is just free range and will not get my videos claimed, please help me with that. I would be more than happy to be assisted with stuff like that. And it would honestly benefit my channel, because I would be able to post tutorial stuff like this in the future, you know? So, anyway, thank you so much for coming by. This was really nice. I really appreciate it. I'm going to try to do more. I'll think about it. Yeah, have a good night, and be well. Take care.